Right. So yesterday we discussed about the testing concepts, like wherein we discussed about what are the different types of testing do we have, followed by that manual testing, automation testing. At the same time, even we discussed about API part, right? So API testing, because when we are developing communication between two different applications, then API testing usually we do, apart from manual automation, etc. And today, as I stated, today I'm going to discuss about the ETL testing part. Majorly, this is a testing which majorly we use it whenever we are working on the data migration. For example, whenever we are working on the migration projects. So migration projects, right? So when we are working on the migration projects, especially because from old legacy systems to the new application or something, either it can be a cloud application or it can be an on-premise solution when you are developing. So at this level, it's always important for us to migrate the data, migrating an application from external as is process to the to be one. In this regard, it's always important for us to perform data migration also, means transforming the data from old data to the new data. Old data may be in any other file formats, whereas when it comes to the new data, it can be in XML, JSON, or something of that sort. So whenever we are extracting the data, generally there is an ETL process, which normally we call this in context to the data part, which is called extract, transform, and load the data. Well, as far as the testing itself is concerned in this ETL process, because there are different tools we use in the ETL. In reference to the testing itself is concerned, wherein it is majorly used for us to validate and as well as compare the input and as well as output of the data, which is transformed by the ETL process, etc., all that stuff. At the same time, ETL testing is also majorly used for us to useful in data-centric projects, majorly, because when we are working on data migration or data-centric projects and all. So wherein because we wants to transform and share the huge amount of data through the data pipelines, as in when I'm stating over here. So that in order to reduce the complexity and confusion over that, ETL testing is what something which we have to be done with. Now, why ETL testing is required when we are going to develop the projects, right? So when we are working on the ETL testing part, because whenever any kind of application we are developing, what is that are we going to test? Whatever the process of the application which is developing by the developer and all that, there must be some data-centric system or the kind of mistakes what we have made through this ETL process and all, we directly impacting the data and as well as downstream of applications, etc., all that. So in this regard, it's always important for us to understand about the ETL part here. But when it comes to the uniqueness of ETL testing is concerned, whenever we are doing ETL process, majorly we do in the it's a kind of background process where we have to follow, where you don't see any kind of user screens or something of that sort. At the same time, ETL testing is also majorly involving large amount of data, which is maintained here. At the same time, the process also consists of different functions and all, where whatever the testing requirements, execution of ETL process and all, everything will be compared input and as well as output data. Followed by this, if there is any kind of defects in the ETL process, which cannot be detected by simply reviewing the ETL code. So this is where generally ETL testing is what something we do. Now, when it comes to the regular process, right? So as far as when we are comparing from manual testing to automation testing and all, it's a kind of resource intensive because which is very costly, right? When you are comparing from manual to automation and the ETL testing. At the same time, whatever the testing are we going to do is based on the sample records what we have taken. But here, huge amount of data is what something we are taking on here. So these are the differences, major differences you see from manual testing to ETL testing itself is concerned. So the major aspect, as I mentioned you, whenever we are going to do this ETL testing and all, the major things happens in three things. One is about large data volume. That is point number one. Right, so large data volume is first one. Next is about data sampling. Whatever the data sampling do we have and all everything. So even data sampling will also be a part of it. Next, third one about dynamic input data. Right, so whatever the dynamic input data and all everything will be done in this. Last but not least, cross database comparisons, right? So these are the major things which normally will be involved, because when it comes to the large data volume and all, whatever the data you are going to maintain within the ETL process and all everything, normally have three different approaches, so that whatever the feasibility, whatever the manual testing, ETL process and all everything will be involved in it. When it comes to the data sampling, wherein there are different cases will be there, right? So wherein we have to discover it of all the data, whatever is processed and all, and whatever the output is generated by ETL process is being injected in this regard. Next, dynamic input data, where whatever the output is generated by the ETL process, majorly totally depending on the input data and the input of dynamic, hence any conventional ETL testing, right? So users predetermined output will not work. Next, cross database comparison, wherein ETL process data from one system and load it into another. It is almost impossible for us to bring the data in one place and do the comparisons equally. So these are the different things which normally comes under ETL testing part when we are working on it. So as in, I can give you an example like static ETL testing, right? So will be there. At the same time, we have even dynamic ETL testing will be there, right? So these are the different ETL testing processes which normally will be involved whenever we are working on the ETL testing part. So this is all about ETL testing. So tomorrow I'm going to discuss about API testing in depth, because API introduction was given in the last session. API testing, tomorrow I'm going to discuss. So for that, we use different tools like Postman, all that. So which I'm going to discuss tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.